In the bleak and desolate landscape of post-war Scotland, a name began to haunt the streets of Lanarkshire, a name whispered in fear, uttered only in hushed voices. Peter Manuel, a man whose presence alone sent chills down the spines of those who dared cross his path. He wasn't just a thief or a con man. No, Manuel was something far more sinister, a predator, a killer, and as the bodies began to pile up, Scotland would soon know him as the Beast of Birkenshaw. The year was 1956, and Glasgow's suburbs were no strangers to crime. But this was something different. Women and families locked their doors tighter than ever before. The air was thick with paranoia, the kind that turned neighbors into suspects and made every shadow a potential threat. The first victim was 17-year-old in Nylands, found brutally bludgeoned to death on a golf course. The crime was savage, but there were no immediate suspects. The police assumed it was an isolated act of violence, until it happened again. And again. By 1958, the killings had escalated. Whole families were wiped out in the dead of night. A father, a mother, their innocent children, gone, shot, strangled, their lives stolen in acts of calculated brutality. And yet, the killer remained elusive, a phantom lurking in Scotland's darkness. What made Manuel so terrifying was not just his brutality, but his audacity. He didn't skulk in the shadows. He walked among his victims, blending seamlessly into the very communities he terrorized. He was intelligent, manipulative, and disturbingly confident. One of the most chilling aspects of Manuel's reign of terror was his ability to deceive. He wasn't some nameless specter. He was a man with a face, a voice, a presence that could charm just as easily as it could destroy. He would later be tied to a string of burglaries, using these crimes as a way to stalk his victims long before he struck. But there was one case that truly horrified Scotland. On a cold night in 1957, the Watt family, Marion Watt, her sister Margaret Brown, and Marion's 16-year-old daughter Vivian, were found murdered in their home, shot in their beds, executed with a cold precision that suggested no hint of hesitation. At first, suspicion fell upon William Watt, the grieving husband who had been away on a fishing trip. The idea that a respected businessman could be a killer gripped the media, and Watt found himself at the center of a nightmarish legal battle. But Manuel had other plans. During the height of the investigation, Manuel had the audacity to befriend Watt himself, feeding on the chaos he had created. He even taunted police with misinformation, manipulating the case to keep them off his scent. But then something changed. In early 1958, a chilling discovery was made, one that would shift the investigation and bring Scotland face to face with its most feared killer. And that's when the detectives noticed something that made their blood run cold. The detectives stood frozen, staring at the evidence before them. Something wasn't right. The Watt family murders had already left Scotland in shock, but this new discovery threatened to unravel everything they thought they knew about the case. As they combed to the crime scene once more, they noticed a disturbing inconsistency. The house had been locked from the inside. There was no sign of forced entry. Whoever had done this had either been let in or had a key. But William would have been miles away, fishing with an airtight alibi. And yet, as suspicion mounted, what remained the prime suspect? The press ran with the story. Respected businessman kills own family in jealous rage? The police, under immense pressure, focused their energy on proving Watt's guilt. He was interrogated relentlessly, his every move scrutinized. But what was adamant? He hadn't killed his wife, daughter, or sister-in-law. Then came the first major contradiction. A witness came forward claiming to have seen a man lurking near the Watt home the night of the murders. But when pressed for details, the witness faltered. The description was vague, uncertain. Had it been Watt? Someone else? And then a bizarre twist, one that made investigators pause. As the police continued their investigation, a chilling piece of information surfaced. Someone had been using the Watt family's car after the murders. It had been spotted in the days following the massacre, driven by a man who was most certainly not William Watt. But who? The case took a darker turn when a local informant claimed he had seen Peter Manuel flashing a wad of cash at a pub. Manuel had always been a petty thief, a burglar with a violent streak. But could he be responsible for something far worse? Investigators found themselves caught between two possibilities. Had they wrongfully accused William Watt, or was there a much more dangerous predator roaming free? Desperate for answers, the police followed up on Manuel. But the man was slippery, a master manipulator who knew how to twist the truth to suit his needs. Then, another victim was found. With the Watt murder still unsolved, the body of a young woman was discovered in a secluded area of Uddingston. The method of execution was eerily similar, cold, calculated, and ruthless. The police were now dealing with a terrifying reality. If Manuel was behind this, he hadn't stopped. And that's when they made a discovery that would change everything. Inside a pawn shop, detectives found a watch that had belonged to one of the Watt family victims. And the man who had pawned it? Peter Manuel. The case against him was growing stronger by the day, but they still had no hard evidence tying him to the actual killings. Until the final, chilling piece of the puzzle fell into place. One of Manuel's former associates, someone who had once considered him a friend, came forward with a disturbing claim. He said that Manuel had confessed to the murders, and not just the Watts. He knew details no one else did. The police had been chasing the wrong man all along, but before they could arrest him, Manuel vanished. And when he resurfaced, he had one last, horrifying surprise in store. The air inside the Glasgow police station was thick with tension. Detectives had spent months chasing shadows, convinced that William would have slaughtered his own family in a jealous rage. But now, with a single confession and a pawn watch, their entire case was crumbling. Peter Manuel had slipped away before they could arrest him. And if what they now suspected was true, he was far more dangerous than they had ever imagined. Then the phone rang. It was a chilling message from an anonymous caller. "I know what he's done," the voice whispered, "but you have no idea how deep this goes." The line went dead. With their prime suspect on the loose, the police scrambled to track Manuel down. They raided his known hideouts, questioned his acquaintances, and put pressure on his criminal associates. But Manuel was a chameleon, blending into Glasgow's underworld with disturbing ease. Then another lead emerged. A young woman, a waitress at a pub Manuel often frequented, came forward with a chilling story. "He told me he'd done things, terrible things," she whispered, her hands shaking. But he said the police were fools. They were looking in all the wrong places. She described Manuel as calm, almost amused, when he talked about the Watt murders. He claimed he had watched the investigation unfold like a game, laughing as detectives stumbled in the dark. But that wasn't the worst part. He said the Watts weren't the only ones. A sickening realization set in. If Manuel was behind the brutal slayings, had he been killing long before? Had they just scratched the surface of something much more sinister? Determined to catch him, police put out a warrant for Manuel's arrest. They knew he was dangerous, but they still didn't know the full extent of his crimes. That changed when another body surfaced. A man named Sidney Dunn had been shot and left in a deserted area. The execution-style murder was unlike the previous killings, but something about it felt connected. Then, just as suddenly as he vanished, Peter Manuel resurfaced. He sauntered into a bar in Glasgow one evening, ordering a drink as if nothing had happened. He was cocky, smirking at the headlines plastered on newspapers about Scotland's most wanted man. But his arrogance would be his downfall. A former acquaintance spotted him, knowing the police were desperate to find him. Within the hour, detectives swarmed the pub, finally placing Manuel in handcuffs. The nightmare, they hoped, was over. But Manuel wasn't done playing his game just yet. Sitting in the interrogation room, Manuel seemed almost entertained. He leaned back in his chair, tapping his fingers against the table. "You're here because of the Watts, aren't you?" he finally said. The detectives remained silent, waiting. Manuel smirked. "You think that's all I've done?" For the next several hours, Manuel toyed with them. He spoke in riddles, dropping hints about other murders, some they knew about, others they had never linked to him. And then he made a chilling revelation. He claimed that he had been inside William Watt's car. The police exchanged glances. They had always suspected someone had used the vehicle after the murders, but Watt himself had been their main suspect. Now, Manuel was confirming what they feared. "But why?" one of the detectives asked. "Why kill them?" Manuel's expression darkened. Because I could. It wasn't jealousy. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't even personal. It was just a game. With his confession, Manuel linked himself to multiple murders, including a string of unsolved cases stretching back years. He seemed to enjoy shocking the officers, detailing how he had broken into homes, stolen from victims, and killed without remorse. But the confession only raised more questions. Some of the details he gave didn't match the crime scenes. He described events that couldn't have happened the way he claimed. Had he truly committed every crime he boasted about? Or was he manipulating the police for his own amusement? Just as detectives thought they were getting closer to the full truth, the case took another devastating turn. One of their key witnesses, the anonymous caller who had first tipped them off, was found dead, shot in the head, execution style. Someone else, it seemed, wanted to keep this case buried. Had Manuel acted alone, or was there someone else in the shadows? And if so, was Scotland's most terrifying killer still out there? The answer was more horrifying than they could have imagined. The streets of Glasgow were buzzing with fear and speculation. The revelation that Peter Manuel had been inside William Watt's car had shattered the case wide open, but the discovery of the anonymous informant's execution-style murder took things to a terrifying new level. Had Manuel acted alone? Or was there someone else lurking in the shadows, ensuring certain secrets remained buried? The press had a field day. Headlines screamed about the Beast of Birkenshaw and his chilling confessions, but the inconsistencies in his statements raised an unsettling possibility. Was he embellishing his crimes? Had he taken credit for murders he hadn't committed? For the public, it didn't matter. They wanted justice. What, once the prime suspect, was no longer in the spotlight. Now, all eyes were on Peter Manuel. Families of the victims demanded swift action. The police force, humiliated by their initial misjudgment, needed a victory. And as Manuel sat in his prison cell, a smug grin plastered across his face. It was clear he knew the power he held over the investigation. But detectives weren't done with him yet. Determined to solidify their case, police combed through Manuel's past. They traced his movements, searching for new evidence, questioning old acquaintances, and linking him to more unsolved crimes. Then they found something chilling. In an abandoned farmhouse outside Glasgow, buried beneath loose floorboards, officers discovered a small pile of personal effects, rings, watches, and trinkets, items that belonged to multiple victims. It was a trophy collection. Among them was a locket with initials engraved on the back. It belonged to Isabel Cook, a 17-year-old girl who had vanished months earlier after leaving her home to attend a dance. Her case had gone cold, until now. Confronted with the evidence, Manuel didn't flinch. She was pretty, he said simply. She screamed louder than the others. The room went silent. For the first time, some of the officers felt physically ill in his presence. But then, as they prepared to charge him, a retired detective from England arrived in Glasgow with disturbing news. He had been following the case from afar, and something about Manuel's confessions didn't sit right with him. He pulled out an old case file, one that predated the Birkenshaw killings by several years. A series of unsolved murders, eerily similar to Manuel's, had taken place in London and Manchester. The victims? Families, executed in their own homes. Young women vanishing without a trace. The method? Cold, calculated, and without a clear motive, just like Manuel's crimes. But there was one glaring issue. At the time of those killings, Manuel had been in prison. He couldn't have done them. So who had? With this new revelation, doubt crept back into the investigation. Had Manuel been inspired by an unknown killer? Or was he merely a pawn in something even more sinister? The thought sent shivers through the lead detective. If someone else had been operating in the shadows, they had been meticulous, careful enough to let Manuel take the fall. And now, that person was watching. In the following days, officers noticed strange occurrences. Evidence rooms had been tampered with. Witnesses refused to speak. Detectives working the case received anonymous threats. One officer, walking home late one evening, felt the unmistakable presence of someone following him. When he turned around, there was nothing but darkness. It was as if someone was erasing history in real time. And then, Just as suddenly as it began, the interference stopped. Whoever had been lurking in the background had vanished, and with no other suspects in sight, Manuel was left holding the weight of every crime. With enough evidence stacked against him, the trial was inevitable, but Manuel, ever the showman, refused to go down quietly. In court, he fired his lawyers and represented himself. He toyed with the jury, mocking the prosecution, throwing accusations at detectives, and even taunting the families of his victims. He confessed, retracted, then confessed again, treating the entire process like a sick game. But his arrogance was his undoing. When presented with the locket belonging to Isabel Cook, something in his expression flickered. For the first time, a hint of nervousness. The jury saw it, and that was all they needed. Peter Manuel was convicted of multiple murders and sentenced to death. As he sat in his cell awaiting execution, a journalist was granted one final interview with him. "Do you regret anything?" they asked. Manuel grinned. "I regret getting caught." And then, with a chilling glint in his eye, he leaned forward. "But you know," he whispered, "there's still one out there, watching." His words sent a shudder down the journalist's spine. Was it just another one of Manuel's mind games? Or was there really someone else? Someone who had used him as a distraction? The answer, buried deep within the shadows of Scotland's past, remained unanswered. And as Manuel was led to the gallows, the last thing he did was smirk, his final secret dying with him. Peter Manuel, the man Scotland had come to know as a Beast of Birkenshaw, stood in the dock, his fate all but sealed. The trial had captivated the public, not just for the sheer brutality of his crimes, but for the chilling way he carried himself, taunting detectives, smirking at the families of his victims, and even sacking his legal defense to represent himself. It was as if the courtroom was just another stage for his twisted performance. But as the final verdict was read aloud, guilty on all counts, Manuel's smirk finally faded. He was sentenced to death. And for the first time, Scotland took a collective breath, believing the nightmare was finally over. On the morning of July 11, 1958, Peter Manuel was led to gallows inside Barliney Prison. The prison chaplain later recalled that Manuel showed no fear. If anything, he seemed amused by the spectacle. When asked if he had any last words, he simply shrugged. Then, with eerie calm, he muttered, "Turn up the radio, and let's get this over with." Within moments, the trapdoor beneath his feet swung open. The rope snapped tight. Scotland's most notorious serial killer was dead. The execution brought closure to many, but lingering doubts remained. Manuel had confessed to multiple murders, yet inconsistencies in his accounts suggested he had lied about certain details. Some investigators wondered, had he exaggerated his crimes to cement his infamy? Or worse, had he taken the blame for murders he hadn't committed? And then there was his final chilling claim. There's still one out there, watching. Had he been speaking metaphorically, or had Manuel known something the police didn't? The case of Peter Manuel left a permanent scar on Scotland. His crimes exposed the vulnerabilities in the justice system. How an ex-convict with violent past had been released early, free to continue his reign of terror. In the years following his execution, legal reforms were introduced, making it harder for repeat offenders to slip through the cracks. But even with these changes, there was one thing no law could erase: the fear he had instilled in the people of Glasgow. For decades, the memory of the Beast of Birkenshaw lingered. Some claimed to have seen his shadow in the streets of Uddingston, where he once stalked his victims. Others whispered that his restless spirit still roamed the halls of Barliney Prison, where he had taken his final breath. Though Manuel's story ended at the gallows, some say the mystery of his crimes never truly closed. Unsolved murders from the 1950s still haunt the records, cases with eerie similarities to Manuel's methods. Did the Beast of Birkenshaw have an accomplice? Did someone else, lurking in the shadows, continue where he left off? To this day, no one knows for certain. But late at night, when the wind howls through the streets of Glasgow, some say you can still hear faint whispers, just beyond the lamplight, a reminder that the darkest monsters are not always the ones we catch. Did Peter Manuel truly act alone, or was there another predator lurking in the shadows, one who was never caught? Thank you for watching this chilling journey into the dark mind of Peter Manuel, the Beast of Birkenshaw. If you found this story as gripping as we did, please consider liking this video. It helps us continue uncovering the most terrifying cases in history. What do you think? Did Peter Manuel commit all the murders he was accused of? Or was there another killer who was never caught? Let us know your theories in the comments below. Your insights spark fascinating discussions within our true crime community. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss an episode. We delve into the most disturbing and mysterious crimes, shining a light on history's darkest figures. Thank you for being part of our true crime community. Together, we explore the past and uncover the chilling truths that still haunt us today.